I still remember the smell of rain that afternoon, that sharp, salty air that only hits you near the Maine coast. It was one of those unpredictable days when the sky goes from clear to bruised in minutes. I was driving toward Haley's office, the one she shares with her husband, Ryan, just to drop off the raincoat she'd forgotten at my place. Nothing dramatic, nothing planned, just one of those small motherly gestures you do without thinking twice. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Ryan's black SUV parked crooked under the oak tree. The windows were fogged, like the car had been running. I figured he was inside finishing up calls. The rain started coming down harder, and before I knew it, I was dashing across puddles. I reached his car to wait out the storm just until it slowed enough for me to get to the front door. The back seat was unlocked. Typical small-town safety, right? I slipped inside, shaking the rain off my coat, laughing quietly at how silly I must have looked. My plan was simple. Surprise him. Hand off the coat. Maybe joke that the old woman still remembered to take care of her kids. But the second I closed that door, the world shifted. The rain muffled everything outside. Inside, it felt too close, too quiet. I was about to step back out when I heard the driver's door unlock. Ryan slid in, humming, and then, after a short beep, his Bluetooth connected. "Yeah, she's alone most of the time," he said casually. "It'll be easy." At first, I didn't even register what he meant. I thought maybe it was about a property sale or some late client. But the voice on the other end, deep, confident, asked, "You're sure the paperwork's clean? No suspicion if something happens?" My whole body went cold. "Absolutely," Ryan said. "She's had heart issues before, or at least that's what we'll say. One slip on those wet stairs and it's over. The policy covers accidental death, doesn't it?" I remember pressing both hands over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My pulse was so loud I was sure he'd hear it. He chuckled, then that light, practiced laugh he used when selling houses. "Haley won't have to worry about anything. The place will be in our name within weeks. She deserves better than that damp old house anyway." The air in my lungs turned to stone. They were talking about me. It felt impossible absurd that my own son-in-law could talk about my death like a line item in a contract. But the details were too specific, too clean. The stairs, the policy, even the way he said, "wet wood." It wasn't a fantasy. It was logistics. He ended the call with a calm, "Got it. Talk soon," then started the engine. My heart raced so violently I thought I might pass out right there. But fate, or maybe mercy, was on my side. His phone buzzed again. "What now?" he muttered. Then he sighed, killed the engine, and stepped out into the rain, still talking as he walked away. I waited. I don't know how long. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe forever. When I finally pushed the door open, the storm had softened. The air smelled like wet pine and betrayal. I stood there in the parking lot, soaked to the bone, staring at that car, the same car he drove my daughter around in, the same one parked outside my house every Sunday for dinner. That was the moment something inside me cracked open. The woman who had spent decades believing that kindness could fix anything, she stayed in that back seat. The one who stepped out into the rain was someone new, someone who'd just heard her own murder discussed like a business plan, and who realized she wasn't powerless after all. The next morning, Port Claremont was wrapped in fog, the kind that crawls in from the Atlantic and swallows every sound. From my porch, the world looked soft and harmless, like nothing evil could survive in all that white air. But every time the wind rattled the old shutters, I heard Ryan's voice again. "One slip on those wet stairs, and it's over." He was bitter. I made tea I couldn't drink, folded blankets I didn't need to fold, anything to keep my hands busy. My house, the house Frank built after our wedding, had always been my sanctuary. Pine floors, bay windows, the smell of sea salt and coffee in the mornings. But that day, it felt like the walls were listening. Around noon, Haley called. Her voice was bright, forced, like she was reading from a script. "Mom, dinner tomorrow? Ryan wants to go over some ideas for the house." My stomach dropped. "Ideas for the house?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "What kind of ideas?" "Oh, just small things. The stairs are getting slippery. He's worried about you." The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. That night, I sat in the living room with the fire low and the tide whispering against the rocks outside. On the mantel hung the chime of keys Frank collected, old, heavy ones, all different shapes. He used to say, "Every key opens a story." I touched one, the rusted brass key to the side gate, and whispered, "What story are you opening now?" When the knock came, I knew it would be them. Haley walked in first, cheeks pink from the cold, carrying a casserole like peace offering. Ryan followed, all smiles and charm. He always overcompensated when he had something to hide. Dinner was polite. Too polite. He complimented the wine, asked about my garden, and finally leaned back like a man easing into his real agenda. "You know, Mom," he said, "we've been thinking maybe it's time to simplify things a bit. This place is beautiful, but it's a lot for one person." I kept my eyes on my fork. "Simplify how?" "Maintenance, insurance, upkeep," he said smoothly. "We could help handle the paperwork, free you from all that stress." Haley chimed in, nervous but eager to please him. "Ryan's really good at managing properties now, Mom. He could—" "I'm sure he is," I cut in, maybe sharper than I meant. "But this house is my responsibility." He was not no stake, it was the self. For a moment, something flickered across his face, irritation, quickly masked with a grin. "Of course. I just thought maybe we could make sure it's safe for you." When he said safe, I saw the way his eyes drifted toward the staircase. My hands went cold under the table. After they left, I stood by the window and watched their car lights fade into the fog. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? I overheard my son-in-law plotting a murder but don't have proof? They'd smile politely, take notes, and file me under paranoid retiree. So I decided on something else. I would document everything. Every conversation, every visit, every accidentally open envelope. If he wanted a paper trail, I'd give him one, but mine would be the kind that led to truth, not insurance money. Before bed, I took the gate key from the mantel and set it on my nightstand. Its metal felt cold, almost alive. That night, as the fog pressed against my windows, I promised myself, no more pretending. No more giving the benefit of the doubt to people who'd already written my obituary. A few days later, I found it the proof that something wasn't just in my head. It came in the form of a pale yellow envelope, wedged halfway out of my mailbox, slick with sea mist. The return address said, Harbor Life Insurance, and the name typed neatly on the front wasn't mine. It read, Haley Cole Beneficiary. At first, I thought maybe it was a mix-up, a clerical error. My stomach told me otherwise. I brought it inside, careful not to tear the flap, and set it on the kitchen counter. The envelope pulsed there under the morning light like a living thing. When I finally slid it open, I saw my own name printed inside, but not where it should have been. I was the insured, the deceased party, technically. My handwriting appeared in digital blue at the bottom of a form I'd never signed. A fake signature. I felt my heartbeat go wild, like my body knew before my brain could accept it. Ryan had actually done it. He'd filed paperwork for a policy transfer. I drove straight to the post office, clutching the envelope like evidence in a murder case. The clerk, a woman named Clara Benson, gray curls, sharp eyes, took one look and frowned. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "My mailbox." She held it up to the light. "That signature isn't real ink. It's printed, scanned." Clara had worked for the town longer than anyone. She'd seen every kind of scam that drifted through Port Claremont, from phony sweepstakes to fake wills. But this one made her jaw tighten. She leaned closer and whispered, "You need to keep this safe. Don't confront them yet. Collect, confirm, then act. Collect, confirm, then act." This nerver. Those words stuck in my head like a melody I couldn't shake. When I stepped outside, the fog was thinning, but my world wasn't any clearer. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the ocean through the windshield. My reflection stared back small, tired, and furious. I thought about Frank again, how he used to tease me for keeping every receipt, every document in labeled folders. "One day," he'd say, "your obsession with paper will save your life." I used to laugh at that. Now it didn't seem funny. That night, I started a new binder. I wrote boundary file on the spine with a black marker. Inside, I slid the insurance envelope into a plastic sleeve, along with notes. Date found. Where? Witnessed by Clara Benson. I added every little detail I could remember, the smell of the paper, the faint watermark, even the type of envelope glue. When I finished, I felt strangely calm. My fear was still there, but it had edges now, something I could hold, measure, name. Before going to bed, I called Officer Lewis, an old friend from my teaching days who now worked with the local police. I told him just enough to make him listen. He didn't laugh or dismiss me. He just said, "Evelyn, in Maine, you're allowed to record a conversation if you're part of it. Just don't do anything reckless, and not reservedy." After we hung up, I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand, and realized what I had to do. I couldn't just wait for another envelope or another accident. I needed my own proof voices, not just papers. Out on the porch, the tide was low, the air sharp with salt. I could see my reflection faintly in the kitchen window, a woman holding a single piece of paper that might decide whether she lived or died. I whispered to the night, "Collect, confirm, then act." And for the first time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a plan. I don't think I'll ever forget the way the light hit the kitchen table that night, golden, harmless, and so ordinary it almost fooled me. If you had walked by my window, you'd have seen 3 people having a peaceful family dinner: a daughter, her husband, and her mother. You'd have thought it was love. Ryan showed up with a bottle of wine and that salesman's smile of his, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. Haley wore a pale blue dress and looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or stress, but she flinched every time Ryan touched her hand. "Mom," she said, trying to sound cheerful. Ryan thought it would be nice to have dinner together, talk about the house, maybe some renovations. Renovations, of course. He poured me a glass before I could say no, and for a moment I wondered if I should even take a sip. The thought flashed, what if it's poisoned? And I hated myself for thinking it. But fear changes the way your brain works. You stop assuming kindness. You start checking for exits. The meal was good, too good. Roast chicken, salad, wine, perfectly chilled. Everything rehearsed down to the napkins. Ryan made conversation like nothing was wrong. He talked about the weather, the rising market, how old homes like this are worth a fortune if you know how to handle the paperwork. I smiled. "You always did know how to handle paperwork." He grinned, missing the sting in my voice. "Speaking of which, Haley's been helping me with some updates, making sure all our documents are current. Actually, we thought maybe you could do the same. Update your will, add a power of attorney, just in case." Just in case. Haley's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Ryan, maybe now's not." He cut her off gently, still smiling. "No pressure, of course. Just being proactive. The world's unpredictable, right? Especially staircases," I said. My tone was calm, maybe too calm. He blinked. "What was that?" I looked at him squarely. "You said the stairs were getting slippery last time. I had them cleaned. But you're right, accidents happen. Heaven is righter." For a long second, no one moved. The fire popped behind us. Then Haley forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "We just want you safe, Mom." I nodded slowly. "I'm sure you do." After dessert, Ryan offered to help me carry the dishes. He followed me toward the sink, his hand brushing against the banister. "This railing's loose," he said. "I could fix it tomorrow." "Don't bother," I replied, handing him a plate. "I've already called someone." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a carving knife. When they finally left, I walked back to the staircase and touched the rail myself. It wasn't loose at all, solid oak, nailed deep into the wall. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time, from clarity. I went to my bedroom, opened the drawer where my new phone sat, recording everything, and checked the red light. Still blinking. Good. Clara's tiny camera, disguised as a clock on the mantel, had caught every word. I felt a strange kind of peace wash over me. Not safety exactly, but power, the kind that comes when you know the truth is on your side, even if no one else does yet. Before bed, I wrote one line in my boundary file. Dinner. Thursday, 8:15 p.m. Mention of staircase proposal to update will. Recorded. Then I underlined one sentence twice. Never accept help from someone who benefits when you fall. I didn't mean to eavesdrop that night. It just happened. The storm had rolled in fast, the kind of Maine thunder that shakes the windows and makes the sea look like molten steel. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs for tea. That's when I heard voices coming from the porch, Haley's voice, soft and trembling, and Ryan's, sharp enough to cut glass. At first, I thought they were talking on the phone. Then I realized they were outside my window. "I told you," Haley whispered. "I don't want to do this anymore." "You think we have a choice?" Ryan hissed. "We're drowning, Haley. Do you want to lose the house? The car? You think your mom's going to live forever?" "Eat way." Lightning flashed, and I saw their silhouettes through the thin curtains, Haley wrapped in a coat, Ryan pacing like a caged animal. He kept going. "It's simple. One slip, one fall, and everything's clean. No investigation, no questions. She's old. She's tired. People will believe it. We pay off the credit cards, start fresh. It's not murder, it's mercy. Mercy." He said it like a justification, not a crime. Haley's voice broke. "You're talking about my mother." "No," he snapped. "I'm talking about our future." I stood frozen behind the curtain, hand over my mouth, pulse pounding in my ears. I should have felt fear, but what I felt instead was this cold, steady, calm, the kind that comes when something breaks inside you, but you know you'll never be fooled again. When their voices faded, I stayed there for a long time, staring at the porch light swaying in the wind. I thought of the boy who used to bring Haley home from school, so polite, so eager to impress. The boy who'd called me mom before they were even engaged. How could that boy turn into this man, the kind who could say mercy and mean murder? The next morning, I called my neighbor, Nora. She's the kind of friend every woman needs. Retired nurse, blunt as a hammer, allergic to nonsense. I told her everything. She didn't gasp or pity me. She just said, "You need to stop reacting, Evelyn. Start recording." "I already have," I said quietly. That was the moment I told her about the devices, the one behind the picture frame, the clock camera, the backup mic under the dining table. She didn't even blink. "Good. Then don't stop. And make a copy of everything. 2 copies, actually. Keep one with me." So we did. That afternoon, while Ryan was at work and Haley was running errands, Nora came over with her old laptop and 2 flash drives. We sat at the kitchen table like a pair of conspirators in a spy movie, labeling files with dates, times, and keywords. Staircase, will, policy. Every few minutes, Nora would mutter, "You're doing the right thing." Paper beats panic. By the time she left, the rain had stopped. The world outside smelled new, washed clean. I wanted to believe that meant something. That night, I sat by the window again, watching the sea churn under the moonlight. The guilt hit me harder than I expected, because despite everything Ryan had done, despite what Haley hadn't stopped him from doing, a small, treacherous part of me still wanted to protect my daughter. But that's when it clicked. Protecting her didn't mean pretending anymore. It meant drawing a line so deep, even she couldn't cross it without falling in. I wrote it in my boundary file before going to bed. Love without truth isn't love, it's camouflage. The morning after the storm, the world looked deceptively peaceful. The ocean was calm again, the gulls were back to their usual gossip, and the sunlight poured through my windows as if nothing had happened. But I had changed. Something inside me had finally stopped breaking and started hardening. I spent the morning writing a letter I never planned to send. It began with, "My dearest Haley," and it ended with, "I forgive you, but I will not save you." I needed to write it, not for her, but for me to say all the words I could never say to her face without crying. I told her about the first time I saw her take her first steps on this very floor, about how Frank used to dance her around the living room to old Sinatra songs, about how I thought I'd done everything right as a mother. And then I wrote the hardest line of all. "You became the woman who watched someone plan my death, and you said nothing." When I finished, I folded the letter, sealed it, and put it inside the blue binder, my boundary file, under a new tab labeled Evidence plus Intent. That afternoon, I called Officer Lewis again. "I think I have enough," I said. He sighed softly. "Enough to make them pay or enough to protect yourself?" "As a have note." "I don't want revenge," I said. surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I just want to live long enough to see the truth on paper." He paused. "Then make sure your paperwork is airtight. Update your will, your insurance, your property deed, everything. You want to die on your terms, Evelyn, not theirs." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of documents spread out like a puzzle. My hands shook a little as I signed the new papers. I moved my assets into a living trust under my full control. I removed Haley and Ryan from every beneficiary line. The lawyer, a patient woman named Camila Reyes, didn't ask questions. She just nodded when I told her, "This is about safety, not spite." When we finished, she slid the last page toward me and said, "There, if anything happens, you're protected." It felt strange taking legal steps to protect myself from my own family, but at the same time, it was like reclaiming something I didn't realize I'd lost: agency. That evening, Haley showed up at my door, unannounced. Her eyes were red, her makeup smeared. "Mom," she whispered, "Ryan said you've been suspicious. You don't think we'd ever hurt you, do you?" Her voice cracked on weed. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But the letter in the binder said everything I couldn't say out loud. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same frightened little girl who used to run to me when thunder scared her. Only this time, she wasn't running toward safety. She was part of the storm. "I don't know what I believe anymore," I said quietly. "But I do know what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I've documented." She flinched. "Documented?" "Yes, Haley, everything." For a second, I thought she'd crumble. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." Then she turned and walked away. When the door closed, I didn't cry. I didn't chase her. I just took the key from the mantel, Frank's old gate key, and locked the door. The click of the lock echoed louder than thunder. That night, I wrote one more line in my file. "I can't protect the people who plan my silence." It didn't feel cruel. It felt like breathing. When you spend your whole life being the peacemaker, confrontation feels like a foreign language. I'd always believed kindness could fix anything, that if I just stayed calm and reasonable, people would come around. But that illusion shattered the night I realized silence was exactly what they were counting on. The test came 3 days later, disguised as an act of care. Ryan called that morning, his voice sugary sweet. "Evelyn, we're heading to the house tonight. We want to help you sort through some old boxes. You know, make things easier for you." Easier for me, I thought. That phrase had started to sound like a threat. I said yes, but this time I was ready. Nora came over early with her small duffel inside it, her ancient camcorder, and a legal notepad. We agreed she'd stay in the kitchen, out of sight, pretending to organize recipes while I played my part. At 7:15 sharp, Ryan and Haley arrived. He brought wine again. Haley carried takeout and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I watched her hands shake when she set the bag down. Guilt has a pulse. You can feel it in the air. They made small talk about renovations, about someday moving me into something smaller. Ryan kept walking near the stairs, testing the railing again, then casually asked if I'd ever considered selling the place. "The market's good," he said. "You could cash out before winter." I smiled. "Funny you say that. I already spoke to someone about it." His head snapped toward me. "You what?" "Oh, a lawyer friend. Just to make sure everything's handled correctly. You know, paperwork, titles, power of attorney, those tricky details." Haley's fork froze midair. Ryan's smile flickered. "You didn't need to go that far. We could have helped." "That's the thing, sweetheart," I said softly. "I don't need help anymore." For a moment, the room went quiet, the kind of silence that hums with danger. Then Haley suddenly stood up. "Mom, why are you doing this? We're family." I wanted to shout that family doesn't plot over life insurance, but I kept my voice steady. Because family shouldn't need lawyers to stay honest. But here we are. Ryan's face hardened. "Are you accusing us of something?" I leaned back in my chair. "Not accusing. Confirming." He took a step closer, his voice low. "You don't know what you're talking about." I met his eyes. "I know you called North Bay Insurance last week, asking about early payouts. I know you spoke to someone about listing my house before you even had my consent, and I know the stairs were never loose." Haley gasped. How How do you know all that?" "Because I'm not as naive as you think," I said. For a second, no one breathed. Then, slowly, I stood. "You said you wanted to help me tonight. Let's start with the truth." Haley burst into tears, but Ryan didn't flinch. He looked at me with this mix of anger and panic, like a man who just realized the game was over but couldn't admit it yet. "You can't prove anything," he muttered. "Oh, I can," I whispered, "and you'll see how soon enough." When they left, the house was unbearably quiet. Nora came out from the kitchen, pale but steady. "It's all on tape," she said. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. Good. That was the test. What kind of test? To see if I still had it in me to stand my ground. I opened the blue binder, added a new tab, confrontation, recorded and controlled. Then I wrote the night's final line. Boundaries aren't weapons, they're mirrors. Tonight, they saw themselves. I used to think the scariest thing in life was losing control. Turns out, the real terror is realizing you never had it in the first place. Not over how people love you, not over how they betray you, and not even over how they plan your ending. But that night, for the first time in months, I felt calm, because I finally decided to write the ending myself. It started with a single text from Haley. "Coming by tomorrow night. Let's put the past behind us. Just us three." The words looked harmless enough, but my gut twisted. Just us three. That was the same phrase Ryan had used the night of the dinner. The same phrase he'd whispered when he thought I couldn't hear. That's when I knew. They were going to try again. I called Nora. She didn't hesitate. "Then we'll be ready," she said. The next 24 hours felt like choreography, quiet, methodical, terrifyingly precise. We replaced the rug at the top of the stairs with one that had a hidden GoPro stitched into its corner. I set up a backup recorder under the hallway console, angled toward the banister. Nora called Officer Lewis, told him to be nearby in case things went sideways. He didn't ask for details. He just said, "I'll be on Elm Street around 8. By the time the sun set, everything was in place. The house looked exactly the way they remembered it, except this time, the house was watching back. At 7:02, Ryan's car pulled into the driveway. The headlights swept across the porch like spotlights, and I swear I felt the entire house hold its breath. Haley knocked gently. "Mom, it's us." Inexpected. I opened the door with a smile so calm it scared even me. "Come in." They brought wine again. Of course they did. Ryan poured 3 glasses, then slid one toward me. I let it sit untouched. "We've been talking," he said. "We all said things we regret. Maybe it's time to start over." "Starting over," I repeated. "Does that mean signing things again, or just pretending none of it happened?" His jaw tightened. "You're twisting my words." "Am I?" I asked quietly. Haley placed a hand on his arm. "Mom, please, we just want peace." The way she said peace, it sounded like surrender, or a warning. I took a deep breath and stood. "Then let's clear the air. Why don't you both come upstairs? There's something I want to show you." They hesitated. Then Ryan forced a smile. "Lead the way." The stairs creaked under our feet. My palms were sweating, but my steps were steady. When we reached the landing, I stopped by the old rug, the one that wasn't really a rug anymore. "This is where you said I might fall," I said softly. Ryan laughed nervously. "You're being dramatic, Evelyn." "Am I?" I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "Tell me, Ryan, was it your idea or hers?" Haley's face went white. "Mom." He took a step forward, his hand hovering near the railing. "You need help, Evelyn. You're confused." "No," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm awake." Rating listeners. The recorder caught everything, his tone, his words, the anger that broke through the mask. "You don't know what you're doing," he snapped. "Actually," I said, "I do." At that moment, headlights flashed through the window Officer Lewis's car. Ryan turned just in time to see the blue and red glow painting the walls. His expression shifted from control to panic. "What did you do?" he hissed. "Exactly what you taught me," I whispered. "Plan ahead." The knock on the door below echoed up the stairs. "Police, open up." Ryan froze. Haley started to cry. I didn't move. I just said one sentence that had lived inside me for months. "If you wanted an accident, You should have planned it for yourself. Everything after that blurred footsteps, voices, handcuffs. But I remember one thing clearly, the feeling of standing at the top of those stairs, alive, unbroken, and finally, untouchable. That night, there was no fall. There was only freedom. I didn't sleep that night. Even after Ryan was taken away and Haley followed in tears, the house still pulsed with everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. Every creak sounded like an echo of their voices. Every shadow looked like the past trying to crawl back in. I sat on the edge of my bed, the same place where I used to read bedtime stories to Haley, and whispered to the empty air, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not until the truth was seen. The next morning, Nora came over with coffee and a plan. "Evelyn, you can't let them twist this," she said. "You have proof. Use it. Don't hide." I stared at her, still wearing last night's clothes. "You mean go public?" "I mean show the truth before they rewrite it," she said, her voice steady. "Ryan will claim confusion. Haley will play the victim. You need to own your story before they turn it into theirs." That afternoon, I called Officer Lewis. I told him I wanted to release the evidence, the recordings, the footage, the documents, all of it. He hesitated. "That'll make it messy," he warned. "Maybe," I said, "but hiding is what got me here." By the end of the week, Channel 9 News called. A reporter named Maria Ellis wanted to interview me for a special segment on elder financial abuse and coercion. I almost said no, but then I remembered something Frank used to tell me. If you don't tell your side, someone else will sell it. The day of the interview, I wore Frank's favorite color, red. Not a muted red, but a bold, full-hearted one, the color of resilience. As Maria adjusted her mic, she asked softly, "Why do you want to tell this story, Mrs. Whitfield?" "Because silence is where betrayal grows," I said. She nodded and gestured for me to begin. I told everything from the first uneasy dinner to the overheard porch conversation, from the staircase test to the fake kindness that nearly killed me. My voice didn't shake once. And when they played the recordings on live TV, Ryan's voice talking about accidents, Haley whispering, "We'll be free soon," something inside me uncoiled. The story went viral overnight. Thousands of comments poured in from women who had been gaslighted by their own families, from sons who apologized to their mothers, from strangers who said, "You helped me wake up." I didn't want fame, I wanted witnesses, and now I had them. A week later, Haley sent me a letter from county jail. Her handwriting was shaky. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know how to stop Ryan. She said she still loved me. I folded the letter and placed it in the blue binder under the tab marked closure. Then I wrote one last line beneath it. "Forgiveness is not reopening the door. It's locking it gently and walking away." That night, I went down to the shore. The moon was high, and the sea looked like liquid glass. I thought about the girl I used to be, the woman who thought love meant giving until it hurt. And I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who finally understood that boundaries are just another word for dignity. When I came home, I took off the red dress and hung it beside Frank's old jacket. 2 lives, side by side, one that gave me roots and one that gave me wings. For the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. I just felt finished. People always think that when justice comes, life clicks neatly back into place like a puzzle that was just waiting for the last piece. But it doesn't. It's quieter than that, stranger than that. It's like learning to live in a new house built on the same ground where the old one burned down. After the court hearings, the noise faded. Reporters stopped calling. Neighbors who had once whispered behind their blinds started waving again, awkwardly, like they were testing the air. The mail stopped carrying subpoenas and started bringing cards. "You're so brave, Evelyn. You inspire me." Some meant it, some didn't. Haley was sentenced to 2 years reduced for cooperation. Ryan got 12. When I heard the verdict, I didn't cry. I just exhaled. It wasn't relief, it was release. Like my lungs had been holding their breath for months and finally remembered how to work. For a while, the house felt like a museum of ghosts, every chair, every wall humming with memories of what almost happened. I thought about selling it, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I began to rebuild it from the inside out. Nora helped me replace the railing that had nearly become my grave. We sanded it, painted it a soft white, and added a brass plate at the base engraved with a single sentence. Still standing. That same week, I sat at the kitchen table and reorganized the blue binder, the one that had saved my life. I relabeled every tab: proof, policy, closure, legacy. It wasn't just a binder anymore. It was my testimony. My story in paper form. A reminder that facts are better armor than feelings. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Officer Lewis dropped by in plain clothes, holding a manila folder. "I thought you'd want to see this," he said. Inside was a typed report, stamped "Case Closed." At the bottom, in neat blue ink, he'd written, "Your documentation made all the difference. You turned chaos into evidence. That's rare." I smiled. "It's not rare," I told him. "It's just discipline disguised as survival." After he left, I brewed coffee and sat by the window, flipping through my binder. Each page felt heavier than paper. It carried nights of fear, mornings of courage, and the quiet truth that justice isn't loud. It's patient. Weeks turned into months. I started volunteering at a local community center that helped older adults navigate banking and legal paperwork, mostly widows and retirees who reminded me of myself. I taught them how to document, how to store copies, how to trust their instincts when someone said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." That's where the idea for the Blue Binder project was born. It wasn't fancy, just a printed checklist, a few templates, and a promise: paper before panic. Within 6 months, we had more than 100 members. We'd meet every Thursday, share coffee and stories, and remind each other that boundaries aren't cold, they're warm walls that keep real love safe. Sometimes, I still dream of Haley, not the woman who betrayed me, but the little girl in pigtails who used to fall asleep in my lap. In the dream, she's holding my hand and saying, "I didn't mean to," and I always answer the same way. "I know, but meaning isn't enough." A few weeks ago, I received a letter from her halfway house. Shorter this time. No excuses, just 3 words. "I'm getting better." I folded it and slipped it under the legacy tab. Because healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about cataloging it properly. Now, every morning, I walk by that brass plate at the bottom of the stairs. I run my hand along the railing and whisper, "Still standing," like a prayer. And sometimes, when the house creaks, it doesn't sound haunted anymore. It sounds alive. The binder sits on my desk, blue and solid, its edges worn from use. I don't hide it away, I keep it open, right in the light, like proof that I survived my own story. And maybe that's what survival really is, not erasing the pain, but filing it, labeling it, and closing it neatly under a tab called peace. Paper beats panic, and boundaries aren't walls. They're mirrors. He's tanning a Zitmanis. Evelyn's story isn't just about survival, it's about reclaiming authorship over your own life. Too often, we confuse love with silence, loyalty with compliance, and forgiveness with access. But real love has structure. Real peace has paperwork. And real safety begins when you stop waiting for someone else to do the documenting. You don't have to face manipulation or betrayal to start protecting your peace. Begin small. 1. Write down 3 clear boundaries that protect your time, money, or emotional energy. 2. Keep a simple family log: note dates, conversations, and outcomes. It's not paranoia, it's clarity. 3. Use the 3C rule. Calm, collect, confirm, before you sign or agree to anything. This is not legal advice. 4. If something feels off, talk to one trusted friend or advisor, not to be dramatic, but to stay grounded. 5. Keep a folder, digital or physical, that reminds you of who you are when fear tries to rewrite your story. The blue binder in Evelyn's hands wasn't just evidence, it was identity, a tangible symbol that truth belongs to those who record it. You don't need a courtroom or a camera to own your truth. You just need to start writing it down while your voice is still your own. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that calm can be stronger than confrontation. And download the free personal boundary log linked below your first step toward peace on paper. Tonight, may you rest easy, still standing, and finally in charge of your own story.